Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I am Stephanie Coleman. I am with Kansas LEND. LEND stands for Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities, hence the word LEND. We are a workforce training grant that is a grant to our funders are MCHB, Maternal Child Health Bureau, and HRSA. We have long-term, short-term, and medium-term training opportunities. Tonight's family education series is Through Our Eyes, Siblings Perspective on Autism. So we have a panel of siblings here tonight, and I'm really excited to get their perspective to share with families. I talk to families all of the time, and I am a mom of one. So I've never had these issues or any concerns or anything like that about siblings. So we're going to hear it from them, what their thoughts are. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our moderator tonight, Cassie Stevens, and let her take it from here.
Thanks for joining us, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and get us started with brief introductions of each of the panelists, and then we'll dive into some questions. So I'm Cassie. I am a doctoral student in clinical psychology at the University of Kansas. I do a little bit through the LEND program, and then I'm also the oldest sibling of my sort of family and the older sister of a young man with autism who is minimally verbal and has co-occurring intellectual disabilities. So I'll be able to share a little bit about that perspective tonight. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Megan.
Hi, I am Megan. I'm also a doctoral student in clinical psychology at KU. I am the oldest of three siblings, including a younger sister who is on the autism spectrum.
Ethan.
I am Ethan. I am not a PhD student. I'm in my undergrad at KU in mathematics, focusing on STEM teach. And I'm the oldest boy in my family, but not the oldest child. And one of my younger brothers has autism.
And Amy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy, and I also am not a PhD. I'm a medical student at Weill Cornell in New York City, and have gotten to know Cassie really well over the past few years. So really excited that she shared this opportunity. I have a younger brother named Jack who has profound autism, and he's turning 22 in like a week and a half, which is hard to believe. So I'm happy to be here to share our experiences as siblings.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, siblings have unique experiences, being close in age to their sibling with autism, and likely spending a lot of life together with their sibling. And it is a family perspective, but I think it is distinct from that of parents and primary caregivers. And at the same time, siblings haven't always had kind of like an outlet or a platform to be able to talk about some of the unique joys and challenges that come with being a sibling of someone on the autism spectrum. So I'm really excited just to have this conversation with you guys tonight. And feel free, whoever wants to start with our first question, is just to tell us a little bit more about your sibling and what your relationship with them is like. What are some of your favorite things about them? I don't know if anyone wants to go first with that one.
I can take it if no one else wants. So yeah, just continuing on, my brother Jack, almost 22. He's actually having a graduation next week that I got an excused absence for from school, which is great. He's ending like his school program that he's been in since he was 4, and fortunately going on to their adult program, so that's really exciting. But Jack and I have always been really close. Like people kind of ask me like, oh, like how did your parents teach you to like be nice to your sibling kind of? And I think it's something that like no one ever really like taught us how to have our own relationship. We just always have been very close. My parents tell the story of like when he was born, he had a ventricular septal defect and had to be kept in the NICU for like a few days after he was born. And apparently I like cried and screamed when I found out about that and was like, no, like we can't leave him here in the hospital. He's special. Like we need to take him home with us. Little did I know how accurate that would be. But I think that's just like testament, like from day one, we've always been very close. Some of my favorite things about him, I think he's just the most genuine person I know. And I feel very fortunate to have the relationship that I do with him. Like, I never really, even though he can't verbally communicate, I never really have to guess too hard at how he feels. Like, if he wants me to go away, he'll let me know. Unfortunately, I taught him how to say go away when we were kids. And those were some of the words that stuck, and he uses it mostly against me now, but that's okay. I'm glad that he can tell me that when he needs to. But then we also have some very like sweet moments too that again, like I feel like are so unlike the kinds of moments that I get to have with anybody else. Like one of my favorite things that he'll do is like if I'm visiting home and I'm like cooking in the kitchen or something like that, sometimes he'll come in and he'll just sit with me. Like we're not talking, we're just purely spending time together. And I can just feel the power of those moments. Like it strikes me at times that like he's one of the people that I feel closest with in the world, and we've never had a full conversation. And I would love for us to be able to, but the fact that we don't need to feel close, is just such an incredible feeling, and I'm so glad that he's given me that. So yeah, those are some of my favorite things about him. Can pass it off to somebody else. There are so many more things I could say that I love about Jack, but don't want to take too much time.
I'm happy to jump in. So a little bit more about my sister. She just turned 18 last week, which is big and feels crazy. She is about 9 years younger than me, so there's quite a big age gap there, which I think has really impacted my experience with her. Because we've kind of been in this transition period of I was a little bit more of a caretaker, and now figuring out how to, or even previously, but figuring out how to be a sibling, not just a caretaker to her. Um, my sister is verbal, um, and I think one of my favorite things about her has been the way that she has taught me to stick up for my feelings and the things that I want, because she is unafraid to tell people what she thinks when she doesn't like what's going on. Um, and I think it's pretty cool. She also is the most creative person that I know, and is unbelievably crafty. She loves to make things, and can kind of constantly be found tinkering with, or she'll see something that she is excited about and just make it. And I think that's so cool. So that is Jaden.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do agree. I think me and my little brother have a really strong connection, and we've got along for as long as I can remember. I mean, there's those little moments like all siblings have, but he's just awesome. And I remember when we were young, there's this new Power Rangers that just came out, and he was probably around 4 or 5 at that time, and he was just obsessed with Power Rangers. And so we would just after school, we would just play Power Rangers all day. It was awesome. One of my favorite things right now is he's like an information bank if on those like specific topics that he likes, and Right now I'm living in my grandparents-in-law's house, so there's a lot of old things that I find laying around. I'm like, hey, what's this? Hey, what's this? And he'll like send me this big paragraph of what it is. And I'm like, oh, this is so awesome, just to like that he just knows that off the top of his head.
Awesome. Well, I'll just jump in with a little bit about my brother. My brother is 25. He also has, if you might have heard Amy say before, profound autism. It's a kind of newer, sort of not yet diagnostic term, but meant to kind of just describe folks on the spectrum who have a moderate to severe intellectual disability and or significant enough verbal communication challenges that it really amounts to having difficulty even expressing basic wants and needs through verbal communication, and also like needing help with most like daily living activities, like getting a meal, getting dressed, showering, things like that. And so that's a lot of what autism looks like for my brother DJ. Um, he and I have had a really like up and down relationship over the course of life so far, I would say. And our next question will get a little bit more into challenges, but I think I very similarly have a really strong like bond with him. And it's such that even if we can't have a conversation and I can't really like go back and forth with him, or I mean, I guess I could tell him stuff about myself, but he can't really reciprocate. And like ultimately, there's limits on how well we really know each other, especially as young adults. I feel like there's almost this just implicit like knowing each other, even if we don't have all the details. And I don't necessarily like know what he wants for his birthday or what he thought about the weather yesterday. I think there's just something deeper and something that's just there no matter what. Um, it's hard to be away from him in grad school. I get videos from home all the time of him um, saying, sister, sister. And often it comes up when something reminds him of me. He loves to watch Disney movies. And so we have, I mean, thank goodness for Disney Plus. It's a great thing. But he has like kind of identified, I love Taylor Swift. And so he will find the icon for like the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, like the filming of the concert, and point to it and go, sister, sister. And it's just really special because, like I said, like we don't really have a kind of a conventional knowing of each other, but I know that he knows me and I know him, in kind of a deeper and unspoken way. He's really funny. He's getting some young adult humor now at 25, and his words are limited, but sometimes he cuts in with something hysterical at just the right timing, that lets you know, like, even if he's not expressing things all the time, like, he's right there with you, and he's not really missing a beat. So it's been a lot of fun. Um, I think with that, let's go ahead and talk about, some of the real challenges that come with growing up with a sibling on the autism spectrum. And I know that those challenges can look really different over time. So I'd love to hear maybe, what does that look like for you over the course of your lives together so far?
Yeah. Oh, Ethan, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it's not all like peachy. It's like that with most siblings, but I will say that there was times, because he does require and does need a lot more attention and a lot more help, that as a child I definitely felt like, man, like I'm not getting that. I feel kind of left out, like kind of on the outside of it. But like as we grew up, like you start to understand more, and I think that's more of like a little kid thing. Like the world does revolve around the little kid's mind. Um, and my parents did a great job of really trying to focus on providing attention to the rest of the siblings. Another thing is when he has those fixations and really likes certain topics, and sometimes that's all he wants to talk about. So like closer to when I was in high school and I was going through all of my stuff, I would start to get kind of annoyed and just like because I want to talk about something else. Oh, I want to do something else. Like I don't want to play the same game for a week. But it there's definitely challenges like that. Now I won't say that's like every day. But I really think those have helped me become the better person that I am today because I am more empathetic and I really think about how other people are going, like how other people are doing right now, what they're going through, what they're experiencing. I have a lot of patience now, and especially from some of my peers, the patience runs kind of thin. But I think those are some things I benefited from having a little brother with autism, and some challenges I've also faced.
Yeah, I'm happy to piggyback on that. So I realize I didn't specify that my sister was diagnosed in her mid-teens. Um, and so a lot of her childhood, my adolescence, was spent kind of trying to pinpoint what was going on. Um, she had all of these huge feelings, big reactions, and we, I think my parents spent a lot of time kind of lost, and so a lot of our energy and focus, um, because we didn't have a lot of direction, went towards, containing her in many ways. And I think Ethan, to echo, like there was just a lot of patience. And for me, I was able to have sometimes more patience than my parents were because it, you know, I wasn't dealing with two other kids as well. I didn't have to be patient with myself in the same way. And I was quite a bit older than Jaden. Um, and so for our dynamic, it did create kind of a very parentified and very one-sided dynamic where I was there to care for her. Um, I was kind of the good object that was able to help her co-regulate. So she would oftentimes, and still does, it's hard being away from her, but I get frequent calls when she's having kind of a lot of really big feelings. And that was a very common occurrence in her across her childhood and my adolescence was me kind of just sitting there with her for hours, helping her kind of regulate. And so I think that there was a, I think that one-sidedness, while it really, you know, helped increase my patience, and I do think that my capacity um, for that is much higher than it might otherwise be. I think it was really challenging also to feel that that was kind of expected of me because I was the only one that could do it. Like I was the only one that she would be pretty rigid about me being there to help her. Um, and I think, again, my parents didn't have a lot of guidance because they just had a bunch of, at that point, different diagnoses thrown at them, and a ton of different interventions and things that they, you know, were very confused and overwhelmed, and kind of trying all these things, nothing was working. So I think they also needed a lot of support. And again, I was in my mid-teens, late teens at this point. So I do think that one of the biggest challenges was kind of the weight of helping and understanding my sister, on all of us. And then I know, I don't want to speak for my little brother, but I have a brother who's a few years younger than me, about 5 years older than my sister. And I think he also felt very kind of lost in all of that, because I had this role with my sister. My sister took up all the space in my family at that point. And he was just kind of floating. And so I think that was definitely very challenging, but it also has, allowed my family kind of this opportunity to really look at our dynamic and how we interact with each other, and um, how my sister plays into that, but also how the rest of us play into that dynamic. So yeah.
Yeah, Megan, Ethan definitely echo so much of what you guys just said. Can definitely relate. Also, sorry, I got kicked out of the Zoom. I think my internet went out, so hopefully this works. But I think for me, some of the biggest challenges, in addition to what you guys have already talked about, have just been times watching Jack be in danger, going through some really severe behavioral challenges, and just feeling like there was nothing that I could do about them. I feel like kind of my first memory of something like this is I remember I used to go to this sibling group when I was in like third grade at like our local library. And I remember my dad and my brother came to pick me up. And Jack like ran out into the road, like super busy street in the center of town, just like darting between the cars. My dad like went and chased him. Just kind of no like apparent sense of the danger around him. And there were future kind of events like that too. He one time like bolted into the ocean. He loves to swim. And we go to Nantucket every summer as a family. And we love the beach, Surfside Beach, which is aptly named for having big waves. And my brother like swam straight out, and my dad had to chase him there too. So things like that happening. One time he escaped our house, and nobody knew where he was, and we were all like running around our neighborhood trying to find him. The police were called to try to track him down. Ended up that he was just in our next door neighbor's house. They had like left their door open and he had gone to get some of their snacks. I guess he was not satisfied with what we had in the snack cabinet. But we were all like freaking out in that time, had no idea where he was. Had like, I honestly thought I was like, he could have drowned, he could have gotten hit by a car, like, who knows what could have happened. So moments like that are really tough. In the past few years, that's manifested as some pretty severe, and ending up to be almost life-threatening self-injury, that he luckily has gotten really good treatment for now and is under control. Um, but there were times when he was experiencing that where it was so hard to know what was going on. And just like if he experiences pain in the same way that we do, like he was biting his tongue to the point where he like almost bit it off himself, like biting through it. And it just looked so painful. Like it was just like mangled completely. And it just made me wonder because he can't tell us how he feels in times like that. Um, if it was painful and like either way is concerning, right? Because like if he's not feeling the pain, he just keeps doing the damage. So again, luckily he has gotten treatment for that. But those times are really hard, just feeling so helpless and not knowing what to do or how he feels. To like echo the positive side of things, I guess, I think that times like that have made my family a lot closer, because like I can talk to like my friends at school about this stuff and like obviously like they try to understand and are very supportive. But no one understands it like my mom and dad do. It's we call ourselves the four corners, our family, because we're all so close. So I think it's really brought us together. And I think the low lows make the high highs even sweeter. Just watching all that Jack has accomplished despite these challenges over the years is such a gift. And Ethan, Megan, you guys both touched on this, but I think the like patience that you acquire through having experiences like this is really unmatched. Like now being in med school, like things that other people are like, oh, I could never deal with that. Like that would stress me out so much. I'm like, like, okay. So I think Jack has really strengthened me in that way. But there definitely have been some tough times, like especially just for him. So.
Yeah, it'll definitely give you some perspective, won't it? It can, it can show you events or even things to worry about that you didn't even know to be worried about before, and that, a select subset of people can really truly appreciate. I, you guys have covered so much already. Amy and I have brothers who are very similar in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of what's been the most challenging for me and for my family has been related to some of those really dangerous behaviors as well. Pretty much, anything in that category of like challenging behavior, you name it, we've experienced it. So for him, it's been a lot of physical aggression, which was a lot more manageable when he was little, and was easily kind of physically redirectable. It became really scary when puberty hit, and it was really just a beast because it was not always predictably triggered, and it was getting really, really frequent. And it required somebody to be there to kind of physically support him and keep everybody in the room safe. And it really got in the way of his opportunities to like get out in the community, go to a special education program like everybody else. Like getting kicked out of things like Special Olympics, where, spaces that are, supposed to be disability spaces, but it gets to the point where, and you understand why, like, it requires so much manpower and support to be able to support that kind of behavior, that it's often not feasible even to access even some of that disability specific stuff anymore. And I think unfortunately, like for me, I don't know if it was like the sound of my voice or something about me in particular that was really bothersome to him, but I was often like the target of his physical aggression for a lot of years. And that was something that I think was really difficult in and of itself, but also felt like really alienating for me in terms of being able to relate to anybody else outside of the four walls of our house. I danced growing up, and so it was just a lot of like always having to kind of cover things up and have people assume that like I'm not fully safe at home. Which, I guess you could argue I wasn't, but I also knew at the same time very acutely that like he wasn't really in control, and I don't think that it was really, I don't think he really meant it. But nonetheless, like it was what it was. There was also some self-injury, elopement, in the middle of the night. We've also had a police search, property destruction, lots of holes in the wall, a couple of broken glass windshields, while driving on the middle of the interstate. So some scary stuff. And I think you come a long way from like the very early stage challenges of like, why do we have to spend so much time in the car going to therapies when I want to be playing with my friends? Or why do we need to move to get access to better services? And this displaces me from everything that I know and love. And we have to do it because our family has to revolve around his needs. And a lot of this stuff that really set in more in his teenage years just really gave a lot of perspective, and has been a real challenge to navigate. And there hasn't been a lot just out there in the world about dealing with these kinds of heavy situations. And if there is anything, it's often geared towards parents and caregivers, understandably so. But it left a sibling like me feeling really, really isolated and high and dry. And I wasn't getting a lot of the gratification of like the good parts of the sibling relationship at that time. And so it's just a lot to hold on to and to try to persist through and keep your head up um, amongst and to keep remembering that like it's not his fault. Like this is just the cards that he was dealt in life, that we were dealt as a family. He doesn't mean it. It's not under his control. And to love that person unconditionally anyway. So I think like amongst all the other things that you guys have talked about, patience and empathy, it's really taught me a lot about like unconditional love, because it really requires it. Um, yeah, we're doing great on time, but I wanted to see does anyone else want to say anything else on challenges before we move on? Because I know like there's not often a space to talk about things like this.
Right. So Cassie, when that was going on with the physical aggression and everything,
Yeah.
was it just you guys at home, or did you have somebody come in and actually spend time and help, like a behavioral therapist, or how did that look in your household?
Yeah. We kind of went up the hierarchy in terms of the intensity of supports that we were trying to get a hold of. School and school behavior analysts tried to help first and did a little bit of like an intensive couple of week like residential program situation where they really tried to hone in on some of those challenging behaviors and work on them. That was kind of a traumatic time for all of us, I'd say. It didn't really work well. A lot of this has been navigating through pharmacotherapy, so medications. And then eventually, for my family, it resulted in some emergency inpatient stays via emergency room, and then group home placement when he was only a teenager, because he really needs like one-on-one, two-on-one, sometimes even more than that kind of support. So even getting like kind of the crisis service help that you would hope would be out there when you're in dire straits like that was really tough. And to try to get people to understand what it really looked like and what we were really up against. And it wasn't just this like, oh, we're clearly triggering him and that's what's causing this whole situation. And if you would just change your behavior as family members, then everything would get better. So
I appreciate you sharing, because I've been through this previously, and now I'm getting ready to adopt, and they're back home, and they're in the preteen, and so but my grandson is high functioning. So like I tell my friends and stuff, it's not like you can look at him and he's, missing an arm or a leg, or you know what I'm saying? He's on the outside, he's this handsome kid. So everybody treats him like he's regular when he's not. And so that's a battle that I'm always having to deal with, because he's verbal. He's like I said, he's very high functioning. But if you stay with him, a little bit, you'll see the autism, and you'll see, but it's those people that just, spend just bits of time with him and not really fully understand. And that's where it's real hard. And some states like where I'm from, it's kind of a wasteland for mental health stuff anyway. So, and then you add a disability or handicap on top of it, and it's really, really hard. And sometimes I know some people have to go out of state, or like you say, move.
yeah.
And I not financially strong enough to be able to move. But yeah, I've had the property destruction. In each one of my places I've lived, I've had, like, say, the physical aggression, the stuff like that. So
That's really tough.
thank you for sharing. I was kind of wondering. So yeah. And thanks for this safe space too. It's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I didn't mention this earlier, but my little brother, he did get diagnosed at a very young age. I think he was around kindergarten, and that was amazing because he needed that extra support and needed that help. And my mom really had to push for that. But there was a lot of challenges and problems they kind of faced when it came to like schools and um, like environments and like programs that would um, really like allow him to be there, because when he would have those big feelings, he didn't really know how to express them, and so it usually came out as physical aggression. And so there was a lot of times where, like Cassie, I was that target of the physical aggression, and um, those are very like hard moments for me as a sibling, because like I have to, like, I can't like take the hits. And so like at the time I was like, man, I don't want to just keep getting hit, and I couldn't back away. And so I definitely learned to like get a parent really soon or everything, but I would always get super upset that we had a physical altercation and we got like in a fight, because they would sometimes get really like really aggressive with each other. And yeah, kind of to go with Megan, like there was a like for the with my parents there was a push to be more patient and more accepting, and you kind of had to like tread what you say around him, because some certain things for a while that like he would just get super angry about.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that as well.
Yeah. I also think that there is something to this kind of idea of the hidden disability. And I, my sister, doesn't look autistic. And that has caused a lot of challenges for her and for our family. Um, it caused some internal challenges with members of the family kind of struggling to pair her with that diagnosis. Um, and then it's also, you know, it's caused a lot of challenges in terms of wanting to respect her autonomy and not disclose things because, she can voice that, and she can voice kind of a lot of relief about the diagnosis, shame about the like a lot of very complex feelings about it. But it also means for people outside of the family looking into the family, uh, it can be really hard for them to kind of, oh, okay, we can kind of pick up on this dynamic. And so when talking to other people, kind of trying to get support as a family, um, it can, you know, I think that there's a level of challenge there. For me as a sibling, it can be hard to talk to peers about it because when my peers interact with my sister for a very short period of time, they don't get that full picture of her. Um, and so I think sometimes there's, especially, when I was in high school, when I was younger, and before she had a a label, I guess, that helped us explain what was going on. There was a lot of like, well, what's the problem? And it was also really hard for us to, she also, I think, she's a girl, and I think that really changed the way that she was socialized, and that she's really good at masking at school, and that impacted our home life a ton because it was really hard for us to communicate with her teachers, why she was completely unable to turn in any homework, because she would come home and have, a multiple hour long meltdown. And um, so I think that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind from like also from a sibling perspective, and kind of for me, like trying to explain to my teachers why my homework wasn't completed. And so and trying to balance and navigate that, which I also think probably lends itself very nicely to the question that we have in the chat. Cassie, do you want to read it? You want me to?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really similar to one of our last questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and go out of order. But the question is, what do you wish your parents would have done so that you felt like you could have boundaries, have a space to take a break, feel comfortable doing your own things? And I'm just gonna broaden that to just what would you say to parents who are wondering how to support siblings? So I think this is a question that we get a lot.
Yeah, I can go. I think whoever said it in the chat, you really hit on something important already. At least for me, like in my experience, I think something that my parents did really well, that has like continued to help me even into my adult life, is just encouraging me to pursue my own interests always, like always making sure that I had my own thing that I was doing that was completely outside of autism, that was just for me. So like growing up, I did cross country running, I did dance, I did theater, like all these different things where like in those like hours when I was there, like I wasn't really thinking about autism very much. Like I was just like with my friends doing my own thing. And academically too, obviously, like school is very busy and like has picked up. And I feel like my parents have always been like very supportive of that. And even like moving away to go to college, going to med school, like they never did anything to be like, oh, like you need to like stay close and like limit your own life because of your sibling. I think like for me, and I'm sure for others as well, like it's been kind of like an understanding from a young age that like eventually I will be responsible for my brother's care. But like even now, like I'll talk to my parents and be like, oh, like I want to come back to Boston for residency just so I can be close, like just in case something happens with Jack. My mom's like, no, like go to California or something. Like don't limit yourself, like see what doors open. And I think just like having those comments from my parents and knowing like they really mean it, like they're not just saying that, they want me to live my life, has been so helpful for me from a young age. And I think has like helped me to also like be the one who wants to come home. You know what I mean? Like I've never felt like they've tried to like force me into anything. Like I want to do it. So I think giving me that freedom, making sure that I had my own space was so, so helpful. So if I had any advice for parents, I would say that just like encourage your children who don't have autism to pursue their own interests and like have their own space separate from autism.
Yeah, I would also say kind of on the flip side, there is something very significant about acknowledging the, I suppose, emotional time sacrifice that being a family member and a sibling can require. And I think that oftentimes, like, as we've said, there isn't a lot of space for siblings in the discussion. There's a lot of very important and still not enough space for caretakers to talk about kind of the burden that can be associated with that, but not very much space for the siblings. So I think acknowledging that can be a really important first place to start. I know for my family, the kind of exploration of my sister's long-term needs and how and where that will fall kind of isn't discussed. And I have to be the one to prompt that often, and that can be really hard. Um, her needs again aren't as obvious, and we're still exploring what long-term care is going to look like for her. But I think kind of the not acknowledging that can then put a burden of stress, rather than kind of a cooperative problem solving feeling.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of that, um, I've always kind of known that it for long-term care that it would be me kind of taking care of him, and I know that like I've always known it, but it's never really been discussed with the family and with that. And he's still fairly young, so that's not an issue like that we need to solve really soon. But I've always kind of known growing up that like, hey, if like 20 years from now, like he's gonna be living with me. And so I've always joked around. I was like, oh yeah, I'll get like one of those like shed houses that are like super fancy and hook up the electricity to it. And so um, at least for me, it's been like we would discuss it every now and then, but it hasn't really been touched because a lot of the focus has been on the here and now and what they need to do for him. And because of like I said earlier, there's a lot of problems with finding schooling from him for him, and he like within 1 or 2 years uh, from his diagnosis, he went to like 4 or 5 different schools because they either weren't safe for him or they just didn't have a program that would fit his needs. And I think that I always wanted to kind of like shield him and protect him. And so when he would go to those schools where they're like someone would like he would get in fights, except it's not him fighting, it's people like beating up on him. And so that was a little hard. um I know one thing that my parents did really well is during this very chaotic time when he was first diagnosed is they would have we called them dates, but it was just one-on-one where like my mom would take me out and it wouldn't be anything too big, but it'd be like we'll go get McDonald's and go sit in a parking lot or inside McDonald's, or we would just go drive around for an hour and a half, and that would be enough time to really like it felt good having that one-on-one attention. um because I know, at least for me, and I know for boys growing up, there's kind of a stigma around sharing emotions. So with me, I never really expressed it. I never was like, hey, this is upsetting me, hey, I'm upset. I kind of internalized that. um and so kind of like how the chat said, showing signs of depression and not really wanting to get involved, really just like having that one-on-one time would help, and we'd be like, okay, I am being seen, like I am being heard. um and even if it wasn't just like if we had a very busy week or something came up, like I would always have talks and they would sit down and just have one-on-ones with me, and that was nice. Another thing is I really like this, and it was more of kind of when I was older, more into like early freshman year is we kind of were kept in the loop of what was going on with him, and um, we were kind of informed on what was happening with his school and what decisions were being made. So we felt like an active part in helping him succeed and helping him be the best version of himself that he can. I think that was also awesome.
I love that you pointed that out, Ethan, because I definitely would echo that for me too. I think there's something to be said about just like the acknowledgement of, like I kind of said at the beginning, the unique joys and challenges of being a sibling, and the acknowledgement of like just how big it can feel in life and how much it can impact your other children's lives and your lives as parents and caregivers. But to kind of figure out with your child like what level of involvement they really would like to have and like what amount of sort of communication they would like to have, especially if they're living away from their sibling at any point in time. I can say that like things that have not been that were not as helpful that we had to kind of figure out together is like I think parents worry that I am checking in too much or taking the autism stuff on too much and want to kind of protect me from it. But I know that I'm an anxious enough person who wants really just genuinely wants to be involved in my brother's life that I don't love it when I find out that like something serious happened a couple of weeks ago that they kind of kept on the down low and decided not to tell me. So kind of having a working relationship with my parents to figure out like what's going to work for us in terms of kind of being a team and to what extent I kind of want to be a part of that team versus kind of taking space to be my own person and really just be involved in my own pursuits and not as plugged in. And I think that's going to be different for every person, every family, and it's going to be different at different stages of life. Um, and so just really getting to know like what your child's preferences are, and what they find to be helpful and making space to just really like acknowledge and empathize with their role in the family, in relation to the whole family unit, but in relation to their sibling and what comes along with autism. Um, like that's some of the stuff that has actually meant the most to me is just the acknowledgement. Um, and I love what you said, Ethan, too, about like finding time to just have your parents present with you, even if it's brief and sporadic. I think can go a long way, just because that is sometimes one of the things that unfortunately has to go to the wayside when your sibling might need a lot more time and attention. It's just you don't get as many opportunities to like really engage with them and have them be present with you. And so finding small ways to do that, I think is really helpful. All right, we got just a couple of minutes left. I have one more kind of larger question for us to finish up with, unless anyone else in the larger group has a question for us. No pressure. Just wanted to make sure we were taking input if there were other questions. Okay, last question is just a broad, like, what do you wish people understood about your sibling or autism in general? And then what do you wish people understood about you as a sibling? If you had to kind of boil it down.
At least where I lived, there wasn't a lot of resources for kids with autism or autism in general. And so when they first started making um, like rooms for them in classes, or they started thinking about modifying teaching to fit their needs, they kind of thought of it as a one size fits all, and it was just kind of like a blanket term, like, oh, they have autism, they just get in a room and they like, and that's pretty much all it was. There wasn't a lot to it more than that, and I wish more people thought of it more as um, the spectrum that I've heard it called, that and there's a lot of variation in it. And like my brother, he's very high functioning and he's so smart. Um, and a lot of people just won't credit him for that, and won't, and there's a lot of stigma about not letting them, not letting people with autism like go out and really enjoy the same experiences that we get to enjoy. And so I think that's something I wish more people thought about.
Yeah, I guess I can go off of that. I think kind of on the flip side for my brother, like Cassie was describing, kind of what someone with profound autism might look like earlier. So he has a severe intellectual disability. And sometimes I feel like people look at him and don't see a person, like they just see the
Mhm.
disability, like there's no ignoring it. And they see him as kind of less than. So I wish that people would look at him and see Jack. Like, he loves chicken wings. He loves music. He's a big goofball. Like, he's always laughing, not just like this big disability and like that's it. Like for example, he this summer we went to the beach and he got swimmer's ear. And he like was pressing on his ear and we like all were like, oh, is something wrong? We don't know what's going on. So we ended up taking him to urgent care. Um, and a PA came in to like take his vitals, all of that. And she like I think didn't even look at him, like, kind of just talked to me and my mom and like just didn't acknowledge him at all. And I could kind of see in his face, like he was kind of like, oh, okay, like you're not even gonna look at me, and like here's the patient, so like they should be looking at him. And then after that, a couple of nurses came in and like they walked in, they were like, hi Jack, like how are you feeling? Let's look in that ear. And like he just lit up. Like I could really see like just one of the ways that he can communicate. Like I could see that he like felt seen, acknowledged, and that he appreciated that versus like someone just like not even giving him a second look because they just assume like, oh, he can't like talk to me and have a conversation like somebody else might be able to, so like not worth it. I want people to see that he is worth it. I think he's the most amazing person ever. Not that I'm biased or anything. But like I just wish that people took the time to look at him like that. And as far as like what I wish that people understood about me, I think like just speaking from my experience, I really appreciate when people like ask questions and are curious about the experience of being a sibling of somebody with autism, especially as profound as my brother's is. I recently was on like a trip with one of my best friends from school in Spain, and we were talking about my brother because she and like some of my other friends and I had taken him out to ice cream when he was visiting New York. And she was saying to me, like, I realized like when we were all together that like I was asking you like, oh, like, does Jack like ice cream? But she was like, I could have asked him. And she was like asking me questions about him and she was like, oh, like, am I asking too many questions? And I was like, no, like the fact that you're even curious, like even acknowledging those things like speaks volumes because so many people like just think like, oh, I don't want to ask about that. That's kind of like an uncomfortable topic. And I think like kind of like Cassie was saying earlier, such a great point. All siblings are different. Like there are some siblings who like really don't want to talk about it, and that's fine. But like I think for me at least, like I love when people want to talk about it. Like again, I think my brother is incredible and like I love just sharing things about him with anyone who is interested to hear. So questions are always welcome. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. Something that I kind of want people to know is like talking about my sister is one of my favorite things to do. I think she's spectacular. And I think what I want people to better understand about both my sister and I think autism in general is really how it can look different in girls. And I think some of the and really understand like the toll that masking can take on especially like young and teenage girls. I think on anyone that is kind of, and then also the way that can kind of lead to, I guess, a little bit of masking in the rest of the family as well. And trying to, and I think that's an important thing, like that I would love for people to understand about me as a sibling is like the way that there is, I love my sister and I totally want to keep it all together for her and be there for her, but there is also a pressure to, not add to the family burden. And I think that's a key thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. I would just add, based on what you just said last, Megan, and this kind of speaks to the question from parents as well, is just finding ways for everyone to kind of know like that it's okay to take up their own space, because autism sometimes can claim a lot of space on its own. And it's really important that people are able to find ways to experience and be their whole selves, and to share their whole selves, and not need to feel like they need to shrink down to accommodate autism. The good, the bad, the neutral, all of it. I think we're just at time, maybe a little over, but thanks so much for joining. I thought this was a great conversation.
I want to thank Cassie and Ethan and Megan and Amy for joining us and giving us a little insight tonight on that sibling front. It's especially for me who has one child, it's enlightening, and I try to help families. And a lot of what I say to parents is exactly what you all have shared tonight. So makes me feel good that I have been on the right track all this time and sharing and making sure that you understand your other children should have date nights with mom and dad, and have their own thing to do as well. So so I want to thank you all for coming tonight and sharing your story.
Awesome.